In a turn of events shocking to absolutely nobody, the Overwatch League is bidding us an adieu. It came into great fanfare and hype and is going out in nothing more than a whimper, leaving behind a sea of potential and missed opportunity. Now they say they are going to retrofit, my words, Overwatch esports into something else, but in the current state of Overwatch, I don't see much, well, how do I put this? Moving in the right direction. And I feel these are systemic issues with Overwatch and its development since launch, and the difference in direction that the players have for Overwatch compared to the direction the pro scene has, as well as mainly Blizzard itself. Now, maybe I'm showing my age here, I hope to God I'm not, but I remember when Overwatch was announced and leading up to its eventual release. To say there was hype behind this game would be a gross understatement. When Overwatch came out, there were legitimate conversations for it to be Game of the Year, and I think it won Game of the Year from some outlets. It was a phenomenon. Blizzard finally making a new IP after so long, and this was back in the days where Blizzard was still a trusted somewhat developer. And everything we had seen and played from Overwatch was nothing short of positive and mind-blowing. Except for the loot boxes, but let's ignore that for right now. So what happened to Overwatch? And no, I don't think it's just Overwatch 2. And I do think it's salvageable. Well, I think a key issue that came into the picture with Overwatch was a difference in the marketing for the game compared to the eventual direction Overwatch post-content support would take. Before release of Overwatch, they did these hero cinematics, essentially a Blizzard cinematic, so you know it was goated, for certain characters, and these focused in not necessarily on the world overall, but on a specific character, like Winston, or Hanzo, or whoever. Bastion had a great one as well, and it expanded the world and made us care about these characters and want to learn more about them. But when the game came out, and we had known about this from the start, the game was just multiplayer. There was no grand overarching storyline that would really expand on what we came to really love and appreciate from these character-based trailers. In a world that seemed so enthralling and enticing, all we really had was a singular or maybe 2 game modes max. And while the game and its systems were extremely fun and replayable, the progression system was inherently bogged down due to the abhorrent loot box. And they would add maps, they would add heroes later on, but the problem is the core identity of Overwatch had been poisoned at that point. A declining Blizzard, coupled with a difference in direction, led Overwatch astray, and many players just simply turned a corner and left the game once and for all. Maybe occasionally coming back just to see what's up, but with nothing in the game that would really sink their claws into them, wanting them to play more. It was fun in spurts, but in terms of getting your boys or your bros together for a few matches consistently, there was just nothing there to grab the player en masse. You pair this with the rise of the Battle Royale, and Overwatch, and eventually Overwatch 2, which is kind of left there, constantly trying to bring back players, but never having the systems in place to keep them around. And when you don't have those players around inherently, interest in your esport and the competitive side of things will inherently decline. I'm also a fan of a simple principle when it comes to competitive watching. Simpler is better. Keep it simple, stupid, KISS is a philosophy that rings especially true when it comes to competitive watching, either when it comes to physical sports or even esports. Look at some of the most successful esports out there. League of Legends, Dota 2, which while there's a lot of complexity when it comes to the hero design, really, what does that game kind of boil down to? Destroy the towers and then destroy the crystal. Job done, right? Like, as a new player, you may not understand everything, or even as a new watcher, you may not understand everything, but for the overall tide of battle, you can kind of get the gist of it. What about StarCraft, back when Blizzard remembered this IP existed? Well, again, you may not be able to analyze every build or build order as they are happening in real time if you're new to the franchise, but you can kind of understand the idea of, hey, both these people are building bases, one has to beat the other. That's kind of simple. And there's giant battles that can unfold, and you couple that with the incredible commentary and shoutcasters that StarCraft had for so long, StarCraft was accessible and was just entertaining. Then you have other other esports like Rocket League or Counter-Strike, both incredibly simple games that don't require a lot of knowledge or homework to get the gist of to enjoy the experience. What about Overwatch? Well, at least for my viewings of Overwatch, a lot of the issues, for me at least, kinda stem from the camera. Either you're hyper-focused in on a player's perspective, which in a game like Overwatch can be very jittery and hard to follow even for seasoned players, or you get an overhead shot of a bunch of characters moving about the place and it's hard to follow. It's just not a pleasurable viewing experience for the masses. If you really love Overwatch and you can follow and you understand the nuance and minutia, sure, it can be a nice experience. But for the whole, for general popularity, it's just hard to follow. Think of it, for the most part, Battle Royales and even Counter-Strike and Valorant are pretty slow-paced, comparatively. They're easy to follow. And when they're easy to follow, it's easier to get into, which in my opinion is pivotal for an esport, to hook you in and make you care. And that's just something that Overwatch never really had. Overwatch was always a really fun game to play, and a fun game to watch, on a casual basis, when it's bolstered by fun personalities playing the game for you, on a stream or on a YouTube video. But in a competitive mindset, it's just hard to follow. Not impossible, mind you, but if we're thinking about a spectrum here, it strays a bit too far into the chaotic and hard to follow side of things. You couple that with Blizzard and the overall Overwatch League just not understanding the key differences in the audience from esports to regular sports. A lot of the times, for a lot of esports, people root for the region, not an individual city. StarCraft and StarCraft 2 were notorious for essentially having it be Korea and then everybody else. Esports flourish, in my opinion, I'm not an expert here, but in my opinion, from following StarCraft for so many years, esports flourish when natural storylines are allowed to develop, not arbitrarily shoved onto the player base. That allows for individual talent to really shine and develop a fan base of their own. Whereas in Overwatch, they kind of try to push the fan base onto a specific team, which is just kind of antithetical to how esports do it for the most part. People like rooting for specific talent, or for their own personal region, which is far more broad than rooting for, say, whatever team Houston had, etc., etc. Maybe that format can work in the future, but it's just the way that Overwatch handled it was just fell flat, quite frankly. And whether you like it or not, esports for the most part are still in kind of like a larval state. They're not as developed and fleshed out as traditional sports, like soccer, football, baseball, basketball, a bit of cricket, mate. And esports thrive when everyone who's a fan of the esport tunes in all the time. For every major, for every tournament. For Overwatch, if your team just sucked, it suffered from, well, traditional sports syndrome, where if people know your team's going to suck, why watch? Now, I don't have any evidence to support that, but when my team, the Boston Uprising, sucked, I was less inclined to watch it. My interest with Overwatch was fading on the whole, and my team kind of sucked. So I had no hook to keep me in, to keep me invested. I know it's a popular thing for a lot of content creators to say to sound smart, and it kind of is. Esports need to develop naturally. And I also don't think that the development cycle of the game should be centered around the esport. Because, quite frankly, most people aren't up to that level. And changes made to appeal to that upper 0.1% of the 1% just won't resonate for most players. And in some cases may even make the game just flat out less interesting and fun. And then you have Overwatch 2 just pretty much saying that the proposed single-player campaign was being essentially ditched and retrofitted to something far less than what was offered originally, alongside Overwatch 2 just kind of feeling like a meme overall. Sure, interest came back for a little bit, but it's quickly dipped away. And I wouldn't even say faded away, it just fizzled out. Overwatch was always an IP that had a ton of potential. But in my opinion, time and time again, Blizzard focused on the wrong demographic and kept going in the wrong direction than what the core player base and what the masses found appealing from the IP all those years ago. The characters, the world, and the fun, replayable gameplay loop, and the dynamic characters and heroes you could play as. And this is a thing that is common with a lot of live service games, where they'll make incremental progress over the years, and people will say, hey, it's way better than it was on launch. That's not a high bar though, and that is not enough. Because compared to where Overwatch 2 could have been, what it should have been, it's nowhere near that state. Now I will say, this recent K-pop collab, yeah, sure, may be off-putting to some people, but the new mode they brought in is kind of fun, I won't lie to you. As someone who has played maybe 5 games of Overwatch in the last, 4 years? I played maybe 3 of them today, just with this new mode, and it was a ton of fun. Overwatch needs more modes, more playlists. It needs that traditional story and hero development and us playing as these heroes, learning more about their character. It needs to feel like those cinematics of old. No one wants to read a wiki to find out what the story is. Tell it in the game. Tell it in a fun, cohesive, entertaining way. Great level design with great mission design to boot. And you pair that alongside a multiplayer that gets constant map development, new modes, new permanent modes as well, alongside a fun progression system that allows us to customize our heroes to our preferences and give us cosmetics that we can earn in-game that are fun and appealing to us. That's the direction, in my opinion, Overwatch should have taken, but it didn't. It just simply didn't. And we are seeing the consequences of the path that it walked take place before us. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe. Have a great day. Go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Till we meet again.